This weekend are the 96th Academy Awards, so today I'm going to stop and rank all 10 Best Picture nominees from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of all 10 Best Picture nominees, or if you've only seen a few of them, rank the ones that you have seen. My list is not the right list. It's just my list, and I would love to see yours. With that said, let's get started. Easily in last place, Poor Things. Every single year, each and every one of us have those movies where everyone else seems to love them, think they're fantastic, and then we watch them and go, yikes. No, I'm on a very different page than the rest of you, and that's a good thing. We're all supposed to have our own opinions, our own experiences with films, and that is certainly the case with this movie. And it's the kind of movie I watch and I just think to myself, there is so much creativity and artistic merit here, and you chose to use all of that talent to tell a story that I think is just so unbelievably fundamentally flawed. The entire idea trying to be explored here, the mechanism by which they explore it, I do not think works at all and is extraordinarily problematic. When you have a movie where the basic premise is a baby's brain is put into a grown woman's body, and she very quickly discovers the joys of her body and sexuality and spends the runtime of the film having sex with as many people as she can as part of her sexual liberation, her journey of empowerment. There are an enormous number of gigantic problems with that plot, and I don't think it has the same message and idea that they think it does. In the movie itself, she says in the middle of the film, after a lot of her development, I'm not thoughtless. While it is true my ability to think things through to the logical conclusions is not strong. The character openly states she is unable to fully understand the ramifications of her actions a good deal after she has started boinking grown men. She has the mental capacity, in many regards, of a child, as stated by her, thus has an inability to consent. So everything we are watching, she's by definition naive. She does not understand the world around her. And we're just watching her be raped because she can't consent as a journey of empowerment. I can't buy into that. And people, well, I mean, she was developing faster, and because of that, like, you can make justifications. She openly stated in the middle of the movie, she does not have the ability to think things through to their logical conclusions. She has a body that has desires that her brain does not know how to responsibly satisfy. Therefore, she's doing things that she should not be doing because she has the emotional maturity of a child. And I just don't think that's a mechanism by which you can tell the story and explore these things that they're trying to explore here in a fashion that communicates what they think they're trying to communicate with the film. It's frustrating because, like, on an artistic level, on a production design level, on a costume level, and an incorporation of score with production design, with costumes, with its quirky, offbeat sense of humor, there's a lot of artistic merit here. Telling a story, exploring themes that I don't think work in the package that they're going with here. And, like, in particular, just like the extreme levels that they go with it. And even in some of the conversations later in the last little bit of the film where, they're talking about whether her betrothed from the beginning would judge her for working at a whorehouse. Even the implications of some of this and all these sense, like, I think there's a lot of problems with where they're going with all of this, with a character that does not understand what she's doing. Number 9, Maestro. To be perfectly clear, there's a big gap between number 10, Poor Things, and Maestro. I think that this is a good movie that has a lot of great technical aspects to it. There's a tremendous amount of craft here, but at its core, I think its fundamental flaw is that Bradley Cooper was trying so hard to make an Oscar movie, an Oscar bait movie, that he just forgot to make a great movie in the process. And so it leans into so many different things that tend to win Oscars. He did the hard work to try and have this Oscar-winning performance, Oscar-worthy performance, Oscar-worthy direction with a bunch of intentionality in the sequences, the framing, transitions between everything. But at its core, it's like a movie that I don't really know who it's for besides Academy voters, besides awards voters. I don't know who I would recommend this movie to. And even when I watched it, watched the first half with my wife, and then as soon as it kind of cut to color, my wife was like, oh, this is only the halfway point. I think I'm done. And it wasn't that there weren't all sorts of technically wonderful things about it. It wasn't that the performances weren't great. There weren't interesting things, but it fails to like have a central narrative that really pulls you along. It doesn't feel like we're really getting to know Leonard Bernstein all that well. We learn things about him. We see moments of his life, but don't feel like we're on a journey with him with the highs and the lows. I don't feel like there's like a central arc in all of it. And so watching it, there's a tremendous amount of craft. There's a lot to respect here. In a sense, I can understand how it got a bunch of Oscar nominations, and I think many of them are very much deserved, but felt like Cooper got the formula backwards. Instead of setting out to make a great film and make the best film possible that he could, he set out to make an Oscar film. And if the movie was actually good or great, that was almost an afterthought. I don't think that's good. That's backwards. It's not the way that it's supposed to be, and it inherently makes the movie feel try-hard, which is a little bit off-putting. Number 8, Barbie. And this is a film where all along the way, it was pretty clear I was on a very different page from everybody else. And what I mean by that is from the get-go, when the first trailers came out with kind of this 2001 vibe, and then when the full trailer came out, all along the way, I said, I don't get it, and I don't know who this movie is for. Very clearly, I was very much out of sync with the rest of popular culture because everybody else saw the trailer and went, oh, that looks interesting. I want to go see that. I went, I don't even know who would want this. Perhaps some of that is just my dad bias that I have 2 girls. At the time this came out, both were under the age of 9. Both of them like to watch the animated Barbie movies, and it just struck me as very odd that a Barbie movie would come out that's not really designed for them. It's designed for people like in their 20s or grown-ups. That was odd to me, and I never really was able to get over that. So finally went to go see the movie and had kind of very mixed feelings on it coming out of the theater, whereas I think there's a lot of creativity. Some of it is incredibly funny. There's so many just ways that there's a wit built into the entire script and the characterizations and everything. And then there's a other side to it where I felt like it tried to tackle a few too many things, and it wanted to go down all the rabbit trails and put all of its ideas in this one movie, so it felt unfocused. Some of the ideas were underdeveloped, and by the time you get into the third act, it has to get overtly preachy, where with the America Ferrera speeches on the struggles of women, when you get to the point in time where you have to literally have the writer state the message she wants to communicate through a monologue, I think immediately you're kind of violating some of the main tenets of film, which is show, don't tell. Communicate your message through the story. Don't pause to have a character. Just say it at the camera to the audience. And that's what this movie does. And I think some of that comes from the fact that it just has so many rabbit trails and too many things it's trying to do that it has to cut corners to finally say ultimately everything that it wants to say in just one film. I think with time, I've grown to like greatly appreciate the way that he's able to connect with people. And anytime a movie connects with people on this sort of scale, that's a win for films. As someone that talks about movies for a living, a win for films is for overall is, I think, is a good thing. And so even if a movie isn't specifically for me and I had my issues with it, I can respect what it was able to do. At the same time, I just wish that it told its message through the story rather than through monologuing. And I still don't fully understand why a movie about Barbie is not designed for my two girls. Next up, The Zone of Interest. This was the last of the Best Picture nominees that I watched. I saw it just a couple days ago. And it's one of the most unique films that I've ever seen, where the reason that it's so powerful and memorable is because of it found a way to use the different tools of film in such a unique way to communicate its message and its ideas and evoke emotions, in particular disgust, from the audience. And if you haven't seen the movie, the basic idea here is that visually, on a plot level, we are watching the head of Auschwitz move into a nice new home where we're seeing the day-to-day life with his family next to Auschwitz. And they're just having little family get-togethers, meeting with co-workers, but through the sound design, you're hearing the atrocities of Auschwitz. And there's no reaction from this family. That's just noise in the background, the same way that you hear horns and cars honking in the background. They hear gunshots, screaming and crying. And that disconnect is one of the most disturbing experiences I've kind of ever had in a film, because it's treating something that's so grotesque as absolutely nothing. It's not even worth your time. They're not excited about it. They're not horrified by it. It's just kind of happening off in the background. The reason it's lower on the list is because within the first 20 minutes of the film, I got the idea. And then there's another hour and 20 minutes. And each different sequence, all the different ways they make this point about the day-to-day life of these people and the dehumanization and just how passive they are, how little they care about the utter evil next door. It's horrifying. Every single one of these little anecdotes, but they're all communicating the same idea and repeating the same idea. And it seems like the sort of thing that would work great as like a 30-minute short film that has some of these little anecdotes and the plot about the husband and his job and his promotions and his transfers and the way their attitude towards all of that. It would have all the same weight. I just don't know that you needed an hour and 44 minutes to communicate any of this. And I think some of it is that inherently the narrative of the film, the journey that our lead characters are on, is entirely meant to be meaningless. It doesn't matter. We're not rooting for them. We don't care about them. A lot of it's supposed to be boring and dull. And it's that juxtaposition between this means nothing, what we're seeing and doing, what happens to them, and it's incredibly important and horrific what we're hearing. But that means we're just playing this out for an hour and 40 minutes of plot that doesn't matter. And that concept, you get it in 20 minutes. Number 6, Past Lives. And what I enjoyed about this film is that in many senses it is a love story. It plays structurally like a lot of romantic dramas, but it's not exploring the typical type of love that we see in movies like this. It's not a romance. The purpose of it isn't for our characters necessarily to get together, but that doesn't mean that it's not a love story. And it's exploring a type of relationship that movies don't usually explore or know how to explore, because they always have to take them in a romantic, sexual direction. And instead, this is just a look at these two people that had this important bond in their childhood and then seeing where they're at later on in life and the ways that they still connect and the ways that they're different, what could have been, as we explore all of it. And it's just done in such a way that it's so human. It's not about flashy antics. It's not about, building to this big crescendo and gigantic gestures of sorts. It's just about two people and their lives that were together and they went separate and they're coming back together. And it doesn't overplay anything. It doesn't, I think it balances it just right of like you feel a tension like with her husband and the relationship there and this new guy coming in and there's insecurities, but it doesn't turn it into melodrama. It just plays it very human and allows us to get to know the characters and relate to so much of what's going on. It wasn't like, there's some people absolutely loved it. I wasn't like to me one that deeply touched me on an emotional level, but was one that I appreciated for doing something a little bit different and exploring relationships and love in a way that we don't usually see. Fifth, Anatomy of a Fall. And this is a movie that when I went into it, I really didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was about to watch. And then you get this story where you never really know what is true and what is not. You don't know, is this lady like a psychopathic killer that's manipulating everything? Or is she just a very unsympathetic victim in a bad situation? And the movie keeps building each side to things, keep giving you little pieces of evidence, and you're trying to unravel it, all while kind of just looking at these different lives. Even just the way that it explores the different court systems. Like as an American, watching the way that their courts worked, was that in and of itself was interesting to watch. But the key piece in it is just seeing this woman that just can't seem to do anything to put herself in a good light. And we don't know if that's because she's a killer or because she's just weird and awkward and all these different pieces that just kind of, without being flashy, without a ton of locations, without a ton of characters, just keeps you captivated as you're paying attention to these details and what the dog's doing and what this kid is doing. Like, apparently they're doing like press conferences with the dog now, because even the dog is fascinating enough in this movie. But kind of a very different film from what I normally cover, but that doesn't mean it's any less compelling. Next up, American Fiction. And this is a movie where I felt the trailers only sold half the film. They pitched the comedy side about the author that decides to invent a character to pander to the white audience and thus, commenting on a bunch of society and having a bunch of hilarious scenarios that ensue with that. But that's only half the film. The other part of the film is the actual drama of his life that probably takes up more of the runtime than the comedic author plot to it. But the two sides are so pivotal to what makes the movie work, because it's showing this very real, normal, grounded drama about his real life lived experience as the character in the film, while having this fantastical side about being the author fabricating a Black experience to pander to authors and directors and things like that. And so it doesn't just poke fun or comment or tear down and critique something. It explores the other side to it. And because of that, you have a profound comedy that has commentary, but it also has real drama to balance out what it's doing. It's not just tearing down, it's setting things up as well. I might have had it higher up on the list. I didn't feel like it fully stuck the landing. I feel with what it does in the last minutes, and if you've seen the movies, you know what I'm talking about. I felt like that was a little bit of a cop-out. Like they couldn't decide where they wanted to land and finish things, and they chose a path that I didn't find fully satisfying, and that held it. In third place, The Holdovers. And what I loved about this one is that it just felt like a classic, good old-fashioned, feel-good dramedy. this is the type of movie that back in like the 90s would have been a big hit film and would have gotten a bunch of award nominations. And with the way people watch movies now, these just aren't as big of hits as they used to be. But it's a film that's just really well made with characters that you care about, you want to get invested in. It makes you laugh. It makes you feel something. And you just want to spend more time with the characters. And another thing I loved about it was the way that it's so designed to feel like a movie of the past. Of course, it's set in the 70s, but beyond that, the cameras that they chose to use, it gives it this timeless look to it that it doesn't feel like this movie that came out in 2023. It feels like it could have come out like in any of the last 4 decades. We could have seen this movie. We could have seen this movie made, and that just gives it this throwback vibe that I loved about it. Kind of at its core is Paul Giamatti, who's just very good at playing these types of curmudgeons, and this might be his most lovable curmudgeon, who is so cranky and frustrating at the beginning, but also just desperate enough, pathetic enough that you can be sympathetic as he's being the curmudgeon, and they just unpack that all throughout the film. And with each of these characters, you unpack why they are the way they are, what they've been doing, giving them this backstory that it just, like, it makes you sad, it makes you smile, you feel good by the end of the movie. Even as bad things happen there's consequences for some of the characters, it's in a way that's freeing for them. It's a victory for them. And in that just classic dramedy kind of way. So I want more movies like this. Our runner-up, Killers of the Flower Moon, the latest Martin Scorsese film that, in a very different sort of way, touches on some similar feelings, similar themes as The Zone of Interest. And what I mean by that is, in this story, we're watching this tale of like very interesting power dynamics where you have the Osage people who, because of the land that they're on, have incredible wealth, but they're in the middle of the United States, so they don't have control of any of the system, any of the infrastructure, the banks, hospitals, education, hospitals, anything like that. Therefore, they have all this money, but they're also very much susceptible to being taken advantage of. And so then we play out this story where we're following Leonardo DiCaprio's character as there's a side to him that's meant to be played as sympathetic. There's a side to him that's meant to see him as multi-dimensional and as a real person. And at the same time, he is so complicit in the murder of these people and the theft of their money. And he's just right there in the middle of conspiring against the person that he kind of loves, kind of cares about the most, and is so complicit in causing her so much pain and dread, and is right in the middle of it. And it has a little bit of that same split nature of someone's actions are just so disconnected from the reality that they are in and what's happening, where you have Leo's character seems to really care about his wife while essentially torturing her and bringing horrible pain into her life. And there's that disconnect. It's once again about the horrible atrocities that man's inhumanity to man and just how passive and casual it can be treated. I connected much more with Killers of the Flower Moon because it is a narrative story. It doesn't necessarily have that, like, The Zone of Interest is very unique as a film because it is all about the disconnect from what you're seeing and what you're hearing. That is what makes the movie so interesting. Whereas this is a much more traditional narrative-based film, but done by obviously one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. And so just tremendously powerful. It almost went too far for me. Like, it's a long movie. You got like 2 hours and 15 minutes into it. I was almost like, if this thing doesn't shift. It doesn't flip around. There's not some justice in this. I hate this movie because you're just turning my stomach. It's wretched what you're doing here. And it has just enough justice that makes it compelling and interesting, highlighting just tragedies of events in the United States, compelling stories. I would say it's a little too long. I wish it was tightened up a little bit, but otherwise another great Scorsese. But coming in at number 1, Oppenheimer, the movie very likely to win a lot of Oscars this Sunday and the frontrunner to win Best Picture. Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors, and to many, he is widely regarded as one of the greatest filmmakers of our time, but as of yet hasn't won Best Director or Best Picture yet, and it really feels like this is going to be his year, where he made a film that tends to be the type of movie that Oscar voters like, but injected it with so much Christopher Nolan, where it's a movie that is able to take science in Senate hearings and make them compelling, where he takes events that happened 70 years ago, almost 80 years ago, some of our 80 years ago, and make you afraid of the world today. No reality has changed. This is all history. It's all been true. But you watch the movie and you feel less safe in the world now than you did before you saw the film, because he brings to life these events and takes science and geopolitics and government and makes it entertaining, makes it compelling, and makes it real. Adding to that, I think this might be Christopher Nolan's funniest film, which seems like an odd thing to say in a movie that's very heavy, it's very thoughtful, but Nolan knew that, and so he just put in just the right cadence, these little lines, in particular, like from Matt Damon, well, what do you want? What percentage do you want? What? It's near zero. Like, what do you want? Zero. Like, these little moments that get a big laugh because they break the tension, but they feel earned, they feel real, they don't feel cheap. And so it might be the funniest Christopher Nolan film, but not in a way that feels inappropriate to the film that you're watching, because it's just so well balanced that it can be heavy, but it can have lighthearted moments. It can be very cerebral and scientific, but goes back to the day-to-day life of Oppenheimer. It can be very personal, very human, very emotional, be about relationships all at the same time. And just even the way that it brings to life the centerpiece of the bomb going off, where we've seen so many bombs go off in movies. And he found a way to make it glorious, to make it this incredible spectacle, but then to use sound and actual physics to make it horrifying, to do this incredible jump scare that's something totally different than what you'd ever expect, that feels earned and proper, and it evokes the right emotions, because he is one of those top-tier storytellers, filmmakers that understands the craft and brought this story to life using all of the tools of the trade. It's my pick for what I think should be the Best Picture winner this year. So it comes in at number 1. Be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know your ranking of the Best Picture nominees and your predictions for who you think's gonna win. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.